There is a specific kind of confusion that only certain people understand. It is not the confusion of a math problem or a question without an answer. It is the confusion of waking up one morning and realizing that you cannot remember the last time you made a decision without first calculating how someone else would react to it. It is the confusion of scanning a room the moment you walk in, reading the energy, bracing for a shift in mood that had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with someone who made your emotional safety feel like a privilege they could revoke at any moment. If you know that feeling, if you have lived inside that particular silence, then what you are about to hear is going to change something inside you that has been waiting a long time to shift. This channel exists for exactly this moment. So if this is your first time here, subscribe right now before you go any further, because this content is designed to reach you where you are, to explain what you have been living through with a kind of clinical clarity and emotional depth that you have probably never been given before. This is a space built for your healing, your understanding, and your return to yourself. Subscribe and then let us go deeper. There is a word that describes what happens when you stop being afraid of someone who built their entire relationship with you around the assumption that you always would be. That word is fearless. And becoming fearless, truly becoming it, not just performing confidence, but actually arriving at a place where their disapproval no longer controls your behavior, their silence no longer sends you into a spiral, and their anger no longer makes you fold. That is one of the most psychologically significant things that can happen in the dynamic between a person and a narcissist. Because here is what most people do not understand. Your fear was never incidental to the relationship. Your fear was the relationship. It was the engine. It was the currency. And the moment that currency disappears, the entire system collapses in ways that are both predictable and deeply illuminating once you know what you are looking at. To understand why a narcissist reacts the way they do when you stop being afraid, you have to understand what fear actually gave them. A narcissist operates from a place of profound internal fragility. Beneath the grandiosity, beneath the entitlement and cold control, there is a self that has never been adequately developed. What psychologists call narcissistic supply, the admiration, the deference, the compliance of the people around them, is not something a narcissist simply enjoys. It is something they require to function. Your fear, your anxiety, your careful navigation around their moods, all of that was supply. It confirmed to them that they were powerful, that they had influence. When you stop being afraid, you stop providing that confirmation. And what happens next reveals the narcissist with a terrifying and clarifying completeness. The first reaction is panic, though it rarely looks the way panic is supposed to look. It does not arrive as visible distress or honest admission of vulnerability. Instead, it arrives as intensification. Behaviors that were already present become more extreme, more urgent. The monitoring increases. The questions become more pointed and searching. They are doing this because something they depended upon is not working the way it used to. And the instinct of the narcissistic system is always to apply more pressure when less pressure stops producing results. It is like a machine calibrated to run on a specific fuel, and suddenly that fuel is being withdrawn. The machine does not gracefully adapt. It accelerates, strains, and overheats. And in that overheating, in that escalation, the panic becomes visible even when they would never call it that. What is happening psychologically is narcissistic injury. Their belief that they know who you are and what you will do and how you will respond is being directly challenged. You have introduced unpredictability into the system, and unpredictability is terrifying to a controlling personality because control is not a preference for a narcissist. It is a survival mechanism. When you no longer flinch at what used to make you flinch, when you respond with calm where there was once anxiety and with clarity where there was once confusion, it destabilizes their entire psychological model of the relationship. And a destabilized narcissist reaches for every tool they have ever used to restore the balance of power in their favor. This brings us to the second reaction, the intensification of manipulation. And this is the moment you must be most alert. The narcissist, sensing their old methods losing traction, begins cycling through their entire arsenal with a kind of frenzied creativity. They pull out behaviors that worked on you before, sometimes years before, and deploy them with surgical precision. If love bombing worked in the beginning, they return to it. Suddenly, you are the most important person in their world again. Suddenly, there is warmth and attention and the kind of intimacy that made you fall for them in the first place. And it feels real because it is designed to feel real. If gaslighting worked, they intensify it, rewriting history with even more confidence, making you question not just your memory of specific events, but your fundamental ability to perceive reality accurately. Alongside this, projection arrives with new ferocity, accusations turning every confrontation back on you, so you spend more energy defending yourself than observing them. They may also mobilize other people, those who have been consciously or unconsciously recruited into the narcissist narrative. These individuals begin appearing in your life, raising concerns, delivering messages, questioning your behavior, or reporting back on your state of mind. This is not accidental, it is strategic. A narcissist losing their direct line of control will attempt to reestablish influence through indirect channels, working the social environment around you, shaping how you appear to others, creating a version of you that is unstable or irrational, a version that justifies whatever they need to do next. And this is one of the most painful aspects of becoming fearless, because just as you are beginning to see yourself more clearly, the people around you may seem to see a very different version of you, one the narcissist has been carefully constructing in your absence. But understand something important. This escalation of manipulation is not a sign that you are losing. It is a sign that you are winning. The intensification of their tactics is directly proportional to the threat your fearlessness represents to their control. A narcissist who no longer felt threatened by you would not need to work this hard. The fact that they are working this hard tells you everything you need to know. And this depth of insight is exactly why this channel matters. If you have not subscribed yet, now is the moment. There is so much more to understand, and every video here is designed to give you the clarity, the language, and the psychological framework that turns confusion into power. Subscribe now. The third reaction, the shift into victimhood, is one of the most disorienting and the one most likely to work on a person who has genuine empathy. When direct control fails, when manipulation does not recapture compliance, the narcissist undergoes a transformation that can be genuinely bewildering. Suddenly, they are not the powerful, confident, sometimes intimidating person you have been navigating around. Suddenly, they are fragile, wounded, and devastated. Every boundary you have drawn, every moment of calm clarity you have maintained, every step you have taken toward your own freedom is recast as an act of cruelty against them. They speak about sacrifice. They reference your shared history in ways designed to trigger guilt. They may cry, and the tears may feel real because the distress beneath them is real, even if what they are distressed about is not what they say. They are not crying because they hurt you. They are crying because they are losing what they once had, which was the architecture of a relationship built on your compliance. They are grieving not the bond, but the control. Here is the psychological truth of this moment. Genuine remorse looks like change, like accountability, like accepting consequences without demanding that your healing happen on their timeline. What the narcissist offers in the victimhood phase is not remorse. It is a transaction. And recognizing that distinction, feeling it clearly in your body, is one of the cornerstones of becoming truly fearless. The fourth reaction arrives when panic, manipulation, and victimhood have all failed. It is anger, and not ordinary frustration. It is narcissistic rage, disproportionate, destabilizing, and often frightening in its intensity. This emerges from a specific place in the narcissistic psychology. When the arsenal of control tactics is exhausted, and none of them have worked. When the person they believed they understood completely continues behaving outside the role assigned to them, the fragile internal structure can no longer maintain composure. The grandiose mask, which requires constant external validation to stay in place, begins to crack. And what emerges from beneath that crack is not just anger. It is primal terror dressed in the costume of fury. The rage manifests in many forms. It can be explosive and visible, a sudden eruption designed to shock you back into compliance. It can be cold and calculated, a sustained campaign of punishment meant to prove that your fearlessness has a cost. It can intensify through the social landscape, with smear campaigns growing more aggressive and the narrative about you becoming more extreme. Or it can come as a punishing withdrawal of warmth and acknowledgement, designed to make you feel the weight of their disapproval and find it unbearable. But all of these expressions share the same root. The narcissist's sense of self depends on their sense of power, and their sense of power has always depended on your response to them. When your response changes fundamentally, something in them breaks in a way that their usual mechanisms cannot repair. The rage, as frightening as it can be, is not a sign of strength. It is a sign of collapse. It is what collapse looks like in a personality structure that was never allowed to develop the emotional tools that actual human beings use to process powerlessness. When you remain steady in the face of this rage, when you do not collapse back into the familiar shape of someone who is afraid, you are demonstrating that their most powerful weapon no longer works. And the moment a weapon fails, a fighter with no other weapons is finished. The fifth and final reaction is the withdrawal, which may eventually become the discard, and it contains a particular kind of pain that nobody warns you about. When everything else has failed, the narcissist begins to pull back their attention, their presence, their engagement. They go cold in a way that feels more final than the punishing cold of the anger phase. And this withdrawal often triggers something unexpected in people who have been conditioned by a narcissistic dynamic. Even when the relationship has been painful, even when the person withdrawing has been a source of confusion and depletion, their absence activates the attachment system. The nervous system, conditioned to orient around this person, does not simply stop doing that because the mind understands it should. The body runs older programming. That programming says their withdrawal means danger. It says chase. It says fix it. And this is where the narcissist, even in withdrawal, continues to hold a kind of power, not through anything active, but through the architecture of conditioning they already built inside you. The discard carries a message the narcissist intends to be devastating, that you were replaceable, that there is another source. But when you have done the psychological work, when you have genuinely understood what was happening and why, when you have reconnected with the version of yourself that existed before that relationship began reshaping you, the discard loses its power to wound. Not because you feel nothing, but because the part of you that needed their validation is no longer the part of you making decisions. You now know that their withdrawal is not a verdict on your worth. It is a response to their own psychology. It is what a system does when it can no longer exploit its source. It moves on, not because the source was inadequate, but because the source stopped being exploitable. And those are profoundly different things. You are not the person who needed them to stay. You are something they did not anticipate when they first assessed you. You are the person who kept going, who kept reaching for clarity even when clarity was painful, who chose consciously and at significant cost to stop organizing your life around someone else's need for power. The 5 reactions you now understand, the panic, the manipulation escalation, the victimhood performance, the rage, and the withdrawal, are not signs of mysterious and unpredictable power. They are signs of a system in crisis, a system entirely dependent on your compliance and your willingness to doubt yourself. They are the 5 stages of a control structure losing the one thing it cannot function without: a person who is afraid. And you are no longer that person. If this content has reached something inside you, subscribe right now. Join the people who are choosing clarity over confusion, understanding over self-doubt, and freedom over the familiar cage of someone else's control. Every video on this channel is another step toward your own becoming, because fearlessness is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of clarity. It is the steady, unshakable knowledge that your emotional life belongs to you, that your worth is not contingent on their approval, that their reactions to your freedom are information about them and not verdicts about you. It builds incrementally, in small choices and quiet moments and instances where you held your ground even when everything in your nervous system was screaming at you to fold. It builds in the mornings you woke up and chose to trust your own perception. In the conversations where you heard the gaslighting and named it to yourself instead of absorbing it. In every moment you chose your own experience over their version of it. The narcissist's reactions to your fearlessness are not the end of the story. They are the evidence that the story has changed, that you walked into a dynamic designed to diminish you and came out the other side knowing more about your own strength than you would have known any other way. And that strength, that quiet, persistent, unbreakable thing you found inside yourself, does not live in the relationship. It lives in you. It was there before they arrived, and it will be there long after they are gone, steady and whole and entirely.